former MEP, migrant crisis expert, Steven Woolfe. Welcome, Steven.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
I'm all... Are you all right? You good?
Yeah, no, it just looked, apparently it's a very blurred screen that we have tonight. Apologies.
How's your heating? It doesn't look like it's working very well.
No, it's damn cold. It's damn cold out here.
I can see that. Listen, before we get on to what I want to talk to you about, you're a barrister. Let me ask you this. So, your little Sara Sharif, the case that shocked the nation, indeed the world last week. So, her father and her stepmother, who systematically tortured her to death, did the most unconscionable things, hit her with a cricket bat, bit her, burned her, locked her, wrapped her up in a bag, threw her down the stairs, eventually killed her. They both, of course, they've been given life sentences. So that's, of course, Sharif's father and Beinash Batool, who was his new wife. That was Sarah's stepmother. Right. So they got life sentences. So as a barrister, tell me this: what qualifies for a whole life sentence? What could be worse than what they did? If we're going to have whole life sentences, surely this pair of semi-human monsters deserve to be put in cells and for the keys to be thrown away.
I couldn't agree more, Kevin. Every time I hear this story, as a father of an 11-year-old, and any father, any mother, any grandparent would do of a child, understands the violence that was enacted on this and the evil, the pure, unadulterated evil within these people, would think that it would fall within the category of a whole life sentence. And the whole life sentence is supposed to be for somebody who has committed an offence that is so heinous that it's in the public interest for them never to be released again. And I cannot see for the life of me of what makes these two people not a danger to the public in any way, and particularly himself. As we know, when he came into this country, he was already facing criminal charges for abuse of women. He'd been picked up many times by the police and dealt with for his violent behaviour. He'd committed criminal offences of fraud. So all of this captures a picture of an individual, a man, that is not only evil towards this child, but it's got a real tendency for criminal behaviour. Surely all of that added together, and a right-minded thinking person would say, whole life sentence, never let them out. Having said that, I've never been one, Kevin, as you know, on this show for me to talk about capital punishment. But in this particular case, I might have wanted to even waive my own principles on that point.
Well, I mean, I certainly think this too deserved the death penalty, but since we don't have that, it just struck me, if we're going to have this thing, the whole life sentence, where somebody is sent to jail, their crime's so heinous that they are told no ifs, no buts, like Lucy Letby, the baby killer, no ifs, no buts, you are never getting out of jail, the worst possible sentence, then I don't understand what could be a worse crime than what this couple of animals did to that poor little girl. So what is the point of whole life sentences if people like this do not get them? I just thought I'd ask you that as an aside. I mean, they've got very serious sentences. Mr. Sharif has got to serve a minimum of 40 years. Ms. Batool has got to serve a minimum of 33 years. But by definition, what we're saying is that there are crimes worse than this. I don't think there are. I really don't think there are. So perhaps we have to recalibrate what we think about whole life sentences and, frankly, give out a few more. Give out a few more because they are vanishingly rare. And perhaps they should be not quite so rare. Just a thought, anyway.
Well, I would just say on this point, Kevin, the concern for me is that 40 years gives them the opportunity to try and persuade people in the future that they're decent and should be let out on parole. That's the problem with whole life. This gives them that opportunity. They should never have that opportunity.
Yeah, very, very good point. Like, a couple of things I want to get... Well, we've got lots to talk about, but first off... yeah, so start talking fast, would you?
Okay.
No, seriously, look, I kicked off the show with this because I think it's kind of strange. On January the 20th, we have 3 very significant trials are going to happen. And I wondered what you thought about this. They are, of course, this is January the 20th, so Southport suspects Axel Ruda Cubana. His trial starts at Liverpool Crown Court. You know, I'm not even sure what he's pleading, actually, but he's charged with, obviously, the killings, the murders of those poor little girls in the Southport dance hall. And also, kind of mysteriously, 3 months later, 3 months after he was charged with those awful offences, we learn that he also had an Al-Qaeda manual and was making ricin, the dangerous poison. In other words, there was a definite terrorist connection, an alleged terrorist connection here, Islamic extremism. That's what we're being told. We were told that 3 months after. The Prime Minister, the police, the authorities all knew that. They kept that in the dark. We now know that. So that trial starts on January the 20th. Also that day, a guy called Anthony Essen, you remember him? He's the guy that attacked that poor soldier outside that barracks in Kent. And we were told his name was Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton near the Brompton barracks in Kent. You remember Anthony Essen allegedly got off his motorbike and nearly stabbed poor Mr. Teaton to death. We were told he's a loner with mental health issues. That may be the case, but we are told interesting facts might emerge during that trial, if you see what I'm driving at. Also, on that same day, January the 20th, Ricky Jones, the Labour councillor, who of course made that speech about cutting the throats of what right-wing thugs during the anti-racism protests that followed the white working class riots in the summer, if you recall. His trial happens at Snaresbrook Crown Court on January the 20th. All 3 of these trials, all 3 of which potentially could be very embarrassing for Starmer, his government and the authorities, because they may expose cover-ups, they may expose the fact that the public was deliberately kept in the dark, and in the case of Mr. Ruda Cubana, I don't think there's any doubt we were deliberately kept in the dark. All of these trials start on January the 20th, when guess what else is happening? It's Donald Trump's inauguration as president in Washington. That's going to wipe out these stories on the television. It will also dilute them in the papers, on the radio, and generally speaking, these news stories will be diluted. What I'm saying to you, Stephen, is do you sense that certain people in high echelons, maybe in the government, have decided that January the 20th is a good day to bury bad news?
Well, I would certainly say that if you had one that came out on January the 20th, we might argue that it was a coincidence. 2, you might even suggest, OK, a double coincidence. But the idea that 3 major important trials, which have both political and very cultural ramifications for this country, particularly in the context of, in the first one, Ruda Cubana murdering children once more, and we just talked about the murdering of a soldier, which have a link connection.
These are all allegations, we have to say, obviously.
Oh, of course, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we preface that. That's the reason why they've got a trial, and there are allegations, and the facts will be put before them. But this is what the allegations are, that they murdered children, that they stabbed a person, that they turned around and said somebody was going to have their throat cut. All those allegations have serious political ramifications. And it wouldn't surprise me that with the work of the Lord Chancellor's office, maybe, where they have the power to kind of work with teams to influence these decisions, that could actually happen. Because isn't it a great way of burying news on the 20th? Yeah. It's a fabulous way of doing so. But it just strikes me as very odd, not a coincidence. It's 3 coincidences like that on one day. It just doesn't stand up to common sense. And
this is only, this is mainly speculation, but a lot of discussion has unfolded that indicates that all of these trials, particularly Ruda Kapana's and Anthony Eason's, could be very embarrassing for the authorities. They could expose the fact that the public was kept in the dark about the truth about what was going on. There's always this strange syndrome where the authorities get very worried about us plebs. Should we get information that indicates that the potential committers of terrible crimes, you know, are somehow connected to Islam or Muslimism? This is the stuff that they tend to try to keep us in the dark about. You know, often, you know, we learn later that, you know, the alleged loner with mental health issues was in fact a terrorist, you know, and so on and so forth. So this is what I fear may be going on. There's an attempt here to dilute these very important court cases because they may prove embarrassing for the government and for the authorities and indeed the police.
Well, we always know that governments don't want to be embarrassed, and they certainly don't want to try and be embarrassed about a particular issue that they don't support very well, and that is the control of immigration in this country and the change to our culture that is brought by people from different cultures. Now, you and I both know that there are plenty of Muslims in this country and people who are law-abiding. They work very hard. They support the culture of this country.
Vast majority of them, to be fair. But
absolutely.
But there are too many that are worrying.
Yeah, but many of them left countries where they had this extreme radical Islam, and they've come to this country in a way that wants to secure. And what they don't want is to have people in this country who share those same views. And all of those who just oppose or total immigration uncontrolled and want it controlled is so that we can look at the people who enter this country to make sure that they are safe, that they are the types of people that will integrate and can join with our values. Now, what happens when a government sees a particular case that might challenge their view of open door migration, as any one of these three cases may, and of course, as you say, Kevin, we won't know until the true facts are coming out in the case, but there's all that speculation and they're embarrassed by it. They just don't want it all to come out. But unfortunately, in today's world with the media, that it is, with people like yourself monitoring it, ourselves doing so, we will not let the truth be hid from the people and we will get it out. So they may put it out on the 20th. The trials may drag on for a bit longer, but we will find ways to ensure that if there is embarrassing information, that should come out, and then the government must address it.
Yeah.